Good Thursday to you, Spartans. Happy Thursday, February 8th. It's our last time to meet this week. Tomorrow we have no Zoom, no meeting, no lesson, no new information, as it is conferences day. Today, again, if you haven't already this week, check in with me at least once. Zoom meeting 1:40 to 2:25 or by email. Since I will be in the building tomorrow, Friday for conferences, obviously, if you want to check in then, you may do so. Perhaps you would like to meet tomorrow. We could also make that happen. If you send me an email, we can set up a Zoom and we can touch base should you need any additional support this week. Today, we're talking about the discussion questions that you guys responded to and some early Supreme Court rulings regarding the Second Amendment before you guys start watching a documentary. Let's get down to it. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. He had a series of questions to respond to. Let's go and look at this. Per the amendment, what cannot happen? We got a couple of answers in so far. Ms. Peltier says a well-regulated militia, mean and necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people. I think we just copied and pasted the sentence in here, the amendment in here. We still haven't specified what can or cannot happen. We go on to Mr. Snow, the guarantee of each state equal suffrage in the Senate. Not sure where that answer is coming from. And then we go down to Miss Nevea. The right to carry arms cannot be infringed upon. Is that what the amendment says? I'm curious. Because it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Is the amendment only addressing the right of the people to keep and bear arms? Or is the Second Amendment also looking at the right of the people to form a militia? Are they separate? Are they exclusively connected? That's a big debate regarding the Second Amendment, and it's been debated, I would say for approximately 250 years that the United States has existed, but it really hasn't been a debate until the last 100. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What cannot happen? In this class, in my in-person class, a lot of kids talked in-person classes. A lot of kids talked about the right to keep and bear arms cannot be infringed, but there's something else here. A well-regulated militia. Does the Second Amendment give people the protection to keep and bear arms, to own guns? Does the Second Amendment protect the people's right to form a militia, which requires the keeping and bearing of arms to ensure that a state is free? This is a sentence. It is one sentence. It's not paragraphs, not chapters. Are they connected or are they not connected? We go on to question number 2. Per the amendment, who or what is protected? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What's the protection? Is it a state militia that's protected? Is it a free state that is protected? Or is it the people's right to keep and bear arms? Is that protected? Or is it all three? Is it 1, 2, or 3? We go on to the third question. Per the amendment, why is the protection necessary? Who or what is the threat? This has been difficult for, again, you guys to answer. My in-person classes to answer. We look at Ms. Peltier's. Looks like Ms. Peltier copied and pasted in the next sentence or the next slide from the notes. I'll go to it. The preamble to the United States Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. I don't know if there's any explanation as to who or what is a threat or why the protection is necessary. Mr. Snow, freedom of religion of speech. Nope. Miss Nevea, to protect the security of a free state, the threat might be outside forces who challenge the free state. Obviously use her context clues, but we don't know what is a threat to the free state. We have to understand that when the Constitution was written in 1787 and ratified in 1789, we need to understand that the United States was going through a bit of a transitional period. If I were to ask you who the first president of the United States was, you'd probably all, hopefully, you would all say George Washington. And I would very much say to you, that is incorrect. George Washington was not the first president of the United States. There were some 16 presidents before George Washington. Prior to the United States Constitution ratified in 1787, the United States used to operate under something called the Articles of Confederation, and it was a colossal failure. After the American colonists gained their independence from the British, a major point of contention amongst the colonists when they were deciding how are we going to organize our new country, they were all worried about oppressive, tyrannical governments, especially a national government. They already had a national government. Their national government was in England. King George III, a tyrant, taxation without representation, the loss of rights, imprisonment, execution. The colonists were worried about an oppressive national government. The Articles of Confederation gave all of the power to the states, which created a problem that would develop into something called Shays' Rebellion. And there was during this large rebellion, the federal government couldn't handle it. The states couldn't handle it because the state that it was involved in couldn't handle it because the rebellion was too big. And because of the Articles of Confederation giving all the powers to the states got to choose who or what got involved. This will lead to the Constitution being set up. And again, I'll go back to the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, meaning that the Articles of Confederation sucked, they didn't work, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, again, talking about Shays' Rebellion, provide for the common defense of foreign countries, promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberties to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. Secure the blessings of liberty. Even in the second time the colonists or the founders of our country try to organize our government, the reboot, part two, trying to establish how are we going to run this country. They wanted to make sure that people's rights weren't infringed by a strong national government. If we were to go back to the third question, why is the protection necessary? Who or what is the threat? Early Americans were worried about an oppressive government. Their safeguard against an oppressive national government was to make sure that the states had some power. And if the states had some power, that would mean the citizens of the state would have some power, which is why the Bill of Rights is added to the Constitution. The Constitution was written, some states said it's not good enough. It doesn't lay out specific rights and powers of the people, which is why we have the first 10 amendments. It was to protect the people and the states from a strong national government. Who is the threat? The U.S. government. We have multiple layers of government in the United States, a federal government or the national government, a state government, and then we go through a series of local governments. The Constitution was written to limit the powers of, at the beginning, limit the powers of the U.S. government from becoming oppressive and tyrannical. We have a history in this country. If we don't like what our government does, we can't vote them out. But going back to the beginning of our country, if we don't like what the government is doing and they're not going to give us a say, it says in our Declaration of Independence, there comes a time in human history that you must rebel. If the states aren't allowed to have a militia to keep them free and safe, and if the people don't have arms in which to form a militia to defend their states, a state can't be free. And a tyrannical government, federal government, can develop. Question number 4, list the subjects mentioned in the amendment, right? We should have militia, we should have a free state, and we should have the people and arms. These all kind of work together. A lot of people like to pick, to this day, adults, people who argue what the Second Amendment means, like to pick out only certain things, but we know that this is a sentence. And when you write a sentence is an idea. It's very clear that the founding fathers knew the difference between people and person. Person is singular. People are plural. These words are used throughout the Constitution. Go back to the preamble. We, the people, as a group, we ordain this Constitution to keep our liberty, our freedom, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense. It's us, the people, doing it. We go into the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, which again had to be added to ensure that the Constitution was ratified by 3/4 of the states. Amendment number 1, Congress should make no law respecting an establishment of religion, blah, 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 or the people to peaceably assemble. Amendment number 2, blah, 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 the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Amendment 3, no soldier in a time of peace should be quartered in a house without the consent of the owner. 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. Amendment number 5, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime. Amendment number 6, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy a speedy and public trial. Article number 7, suits of common law. The right of the trial by jury should be reserved. No fact that the jury no fact tried by a jury should be otherwise or re-examined in any court of the United States. Number 8, excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishment. Number 9, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people, the group. If we're looking at the Second Amendment, person versus group, is there something being overlooked here? Does the individual have the right to keep and bear arms? Or do the people as a whole, meaning a part of a well-regulated militia, do they get to keep and bear arms? And not to mention, who regulates the militia? This was a painstaking question in my in-person class because they kept saying the government gets to regulate the militia. What government? The federal government, the United States government, or the state government? For example, the Minnesota government. Are these two ideas separate? Or are they exclusively mutual? Does an individual get to keep and bear arms? It says people, not person, it says people. So does that have any implication that, or any requirement that the people in a well-regulated militia get to keep and bear arms? We know that the Constitution controls what the federal government can and cannot do. The Constitution doesn't control what people do. One time in US history did we add an amendment to the Constitution which limited what people can do. That was the prohibition of alcohol. Didn't last very long. That was repealed. The Constitution does not control what people do. Laws control what people do. Constitution controls what the government does. And again, up until after the Civil War, the Constitution controlled what the US government does. So then I bring the next question to you. Can a state control? Can a state limit or regulate the type of weapons that people keep and bear? I don't know if this says that people have the right to a gun, or if people have the right to any gun that they want. This is a debate, and it's a debate that we've had pretty fiercely for the last 75 years. The issue over guns, gun control, gun rights really has not been present in our court systems in something called case law or precedent. We do know that the Constitution based on Barron versus Baltimore in 1833 specifically said that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights only refers to the United States government. So since then, could states control what people had? Could states limit who or what type of guns people are allowed to have? Again, that will be changed in the 14th Amendment after the Civil War, when it was ratified to our Constitution that the state governments have to follow the Constitution as well. And this is solely connected to Southern states not wanting to treat freed slaves equally. Guns didn't come into our court systems until the 20th century. United States versus Miller. United States versus Miller says that the federal government has a right to regulate the types of guns that people had. This is concerning because if we were talking about the original intent of the United States Constitution, it was to limit what the US government could do. And part of limiting what the US government could do was to allow the states to be able to make choices for themselves, and if necessary, allow the states to rebel. Think about the Civil War. How many states seceded from the Union over slavery? Think about what's going on right now with things like abortion or immigration. There's some highly sensitive topics that are being discussed. Some states threaten to leave. There is a growing belief that at some point in time, the 50 states of the US are going to separate into countries. And again, to resist government oppression, what do people need to have? Weapons. They need weapons. What are you going to fight against the United States government with rolling pins and knives? That's not going to work. Should the United States government have the right to regulate the weapons that people have? Again, looking at our country's foundation, our beginnings, it was about keeping the people and the states free from oppression. You know, part of the problem and part of the difficulty with understanding this is you have to know who gets to decide what is constitutional and unconstitutional. I hope you know the answer to this. The only people who get to decide what is, the people who have the final say, and thus they really have the only say, is determining what and what is not constitutional, is the United States Supreme Court. And once they make their decision, that's the decision. The only way to change a Supreme Court decision is if the Supreme Court decides to change their mind. And that doesn't happen very frequently. The court does not overturn itself with any sort of regularity. The only other way to change a Supreme Court decision is to amend the Constitution, which would require 3/4 of the states to agree to it. That's not an easy thing to do. 3/4 of 50 is approximately what, 39, 38 states? Woo! I don't know if that's an easy thing to do. You might think that people have the right to guns, any type of gun that they have. You might think that the government has the right to regulate guns. I'm not telling you what to think. I don't know the answer to this. I know it's complicated because the Constitution was meant to originally limit the power of the US government. I think there's a problem with US versus Miller. Can the federal government limit people's rights to guns when that amendment was put in there specifically to control how much power the US government had? US versus Miller also gives us a little insight into what comes first, the chicken or the egg. If we were to go back and look at the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So do people have to have a gun to be a part of the militia? Or do people need to be a part of the militia to have a gun? If we look at our country's founding, Our country didn't have a lot. It didn't have the tax structure that it has today to just provide people with what they need to be a soldier or to be in the militia. U.S. versus Miller lays out kind of this idea that, of course, people have to be people have to have a firearm to be able to serve in the militia, because not everyone has it, or not every state's going to be able to provide it. So we're going to need people to be able to have these weapons. It's a tricky topic, and there's no easy answer, but we're going to get some more information, and you guys get to decide for yourselves. Here's what we got, and here's what you need to have finished by next week on Tuesday. All right, I'm only going to have today, tomorrow. You're at home Monday and Tuesday. You have a video guide to watch. You have a video to watch and a video guide to complete. All right. This is the video guide Under the Gun. Now, here's the thing. This is a copyrighted movie that's only available via stream, so I wasn't able to pirate this from a DVD. So, per the assignment, answer the following questions while watching the video. The video may be accessed through MGM streaming for free for 7 days. So you're going to have to set up an account, but it's really not that complicated. I would make sure you watch it within 7 days if you don't want to pay the $6 for the subscription. And then obviously next week, I will remind you to cancel your 7-day free trial. I would imagine most of you have an iTunes account. And if you have iTunes, then you obviously have Apple TV, or you can download that, that app. Here's what you're going to do. Once you open up the Apple TV application, you're going to type in Under the Gun. And you're going to search, and it will pop up. You're going to click on the icon for the movie. All right. Mine says resume because I've already repurchased my subscription for the next 7 days. You're going to have an option here for subscribe. You're going to have to click subscribe, and you're going to have to enter some information. You're not going to be charged for watching it unless you don't cancel it within 7 days. But you need to make sure that you have this watched and the questions answered by the time we start class next week. All right. This should be done again by the 13th, which puts us on Tuesday. All right. And again, on Tuesday, I will remind you to cancel your subscription. This video is very much pro gun control. We will also watch a video later on in the unit, probably at the end of the week, that is very much gun rights. So you will get both sides of the spectrum here. All right. And then by the end of it, you'll be able to make a more informed decision. Should we have more gun laws? Should we have less gun laws? Should the government be able to limit? Should the government be able to control whether or not people have guns? Enjoy your long weekend. I look forward to seeing you guys until I see you next week, or until I see you tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Till I see you, next week, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Until I see you again. Let's go with that. Go Spartans.